Okay, so what on earth does a nuclear warhead have in common with your savings account? Sounds like a strange question, right? But stick with me, because the answer, well, it reveals something really surprising about the whole idea of security. Today, we're going to untangle this huge web that connects, believe it or not, global military strategy all the way down to the safety of our own wallets.
All right, let's just dive right in. We're starting at the top. The highest possible stakes you can imagine. This headline right here, it just perfectly captures this new sense of urgency in the global balance of power. You read that and you immediately feel it, right? The competition, the tension, this race to stay ahead.
And, this feeling of urgency often gets amplified by some really powerful, almost apocalyptic messaging. Just look at this image. It's not just a political poster, is it? It's visceral. It's trying to frame the whole geopolitical landscape as something so fragile that the stars themselves could fall from the sky. Wow, it's totally designed to make you feel like global security is just hanging by a thread.
Okay, so what does this race for security actually look like when we're talking about a global scale?
So what's really behind all this tension? Well, it's pretty much a classic chain reaction. You've got one country, say Russia, testing new advanced nuclear systems. And then what happens? Another country, the US, feels the pressure. They think, okay, we need to restart our own testing to keep up, to maintain what they call a necessary deterrent. And so each move just justifies the next. It's this endless cycle of preparing for the absolute worst-case scenario.
Okay. Now, this is where it gets really interesting when you look at the reality of this race right now. So yeah, the US and Russia, they still have most of the world's nuclear warheads by a long shot. But the whole dynamic is shifting. You see China there? Their arsenal, while it's smaller right now, is growing. And it's growing fast. We're talking projections that it could blow past 1,000 warheads by 2030. So it's not just about who has the most today, it's about who's building the fastest for tomorrow.
So all this talk about strategic defense and deterrence, kind of makes you wonder, right? How do we take these huge, grand ideas about safety between nations and, well, what does that look like closer to home?
All right, let's do that. Let's bring our focus in from the big international stage to what's happening right here on the national level.
Okay, so at the federal level, the big player here is, of course, the Department of Defense. And I want you to look at their mission statement. It's really clear. It connects two big ideas: stopping wars on the global stage and making sure our nation is secure right here at home. They see those two things as totally inseparable.
And this slide, man, it just shows you the sheer scale of that mission. The DoD isn't just about soldiers and ships and planes. Not at all. It's this huge, sprawling network of super specialized agencies. You've got agencies for intelligence, for logistics. There's even one dedicated entirely to threat reduction. It's like this incredibly complex machine, and its whole job is to anticipate and manage risk.
But, security isn't just about these giant federal agencies. That same idea, threat reduction, it happens on a much, much smaller level. Just take this law, for instance. This isn't about foreign armies. This is about trying to prevent violence inside our own communities by saying, hey, maybe violent felons shouldn't have access to stuff like body armor. See? It's the exact same goal. Manage the risk, just on a completely different scale.
And that brings this whole idea of security all the way down to the most personal and honestly, the most frightening level, you and me, the individual.
Because when all those other layers of security fail, the national stuff, the federal agencies, even the local laws, when they all fail, the impact is just immediate, and it's devastating. There's nothing abstract about it. We can see it right here in this chillingly direct text from a recent crime. The failure of safety becomes very, very real and very, very personal.
So what happens when personal safety is violated like that? Well, our justice system has a framework. It gives victims a set of rights. It's like a form of institutional security that's supposed to help restore some sense of safety and stop more harm from happening. But here's the key thing to notice. This is all a response plan. It's reactive. It kicks in after all our proactive defenses have already failed.
Okay, so when you think about all these different threats, from something as huge as nuclear war all the way down to personal violence, it really makes you ask a big question. Beyond just physical safety, what's the real bedrock of stability in our day-to-day lives? What's the thing that lets us just function and plan for the future?
Well, the answer might actually be found in a place that feels like it's a million miles away from missiles and courtrooms. But, and this is the cool part, it runs on a surprisingly similar logic.
And here it is, the contingency fund, or what most of us just call an emergency fund. But I want you to really think about what that is.
It's a proactive measure. It's your own personal defense system. You're not saving that money for a specific threat you know is coming. No, you're saving it for the unknown stuff. A sudden job loss, a crazy medical bill, the car breaking down. It's your buffer against all the uncertainty of life.
And what's wild is that this exact same logic scales way up to a societal level. Think about programs like SNAP benefits. What are they, really? They're basically a form of community contingency planning. They're like a collective fund that provides a buffer against economic hardship for people who need it most. It's a shared safety net.
Okay, and this brings us to the final, and I think the most crucial connection. Let's zoom all the way back out now and see how all these different levels of security, global, national, personal, and even financial, are actually all just different parts of the very same story.
This, right here, is the aha moment. This is where it all clicks. Look at this. On one side, you have the tools of national security, right? Deterrence, stockpiles, threat reduction. And on the other side, the tools of your financial security, an emergency fund, a social safety net, risk management. The words are totally different, but the core idea, the principles, they are identical. It is all about preparing for the worst, managing risk, and having a plan ready to go when things inevitably go wrong. So really, just think about that for a second. A nation's nuclear arsenal and a family's emergency savings account. I mean, they couldn't seem more different, could they? But at their core, they are both answers to the same fundamental human question. How do we protect ourselves from whatever might be coming down the road? They're both just strategies we use to try and create some stability in a world that is, by its very nature, uncertain. So in the end, all of these layers, the global, the national, the personal, the financial, they all form this big interconnected web of security. And a break in one part of the web can put a ton of stress on another. So the real challenge for all of us, as individuals and as a society, is to look at this whole web and ask ourselves, where do we focus our energy, our resources, our attention? Which threats matter most? Because how we answer that, well, that's the question that really defines our security.